I was recently talking with a subscriber to the Have a Word website, which, first of all, shameless plug. If you're not a subscriber and you want access to all of the downloadables, the teardowns, the annotations, the materials like you're going to see in today's video, if you want access to that, if you check in the description below, you will find a link to a page where you just put your name and your email address in, and that will give you access to everything that is released within the videos. So, you can download it, do what you want with it, etc., etc., etc. But anyway, so I was talking to somebody who's already done that. They're a subscriber, and we were talking in particular of payment. And this freelancer had very unfortunately just had what happens to many freelancers. They got stiffed on a payment. The client just went quiet and ghosted them. And it kind of happens to all of us at some point. It's happened to me, it's happened to most freelancers I know. Part of me thinks it is almost a rite of passage, but it's one that you want to kind of avoid. And there are a couple of ways to avoid it. The first is to always have a contract. Always, always, always. Even if it's a small job, get it in writing. Get somebody to sign that they are hiring you for a specific task and that they plan to pay you X amount for Y service. Beyond that, even then you can sometimes come across an unscrupulous person who is only looking for some free labour. They have no intention of paying you. So what this freelancer had done was they did have a contract and they'd completed the work, and the agreement was that the payment would be made upon completion of the project. Now, for project-based work, that is not a bad way to do it. It's not a good way to do it, though. It's much better to take a deposit up front. There are two ways to do this. Now, I was speaking with this person about these two methods that I've employed. I recently just sent the final invoice for one project that is the second method here. And I'm going to share my iPad screen with you and explain how they work in a second. But if you're doing project work, always work on one of these sort of formats, processes, because it reduces the chance that you will get nothing to zero. You'll always get paid something. You might not get paid the full amount. I can't talk today, jeez. You might not get paid the full amount, but you will get something. So I'm going to share my screen now. There you go, perfect. Look at that. Now, if my face is all stretched out, I don't know why it does this when I share my iPad, but it looks like I've got wide face. Anyway, so this is payment models for project work. The first is a very simple one. It's a non-refundable deposit, right? This is what I tend to use for some project work. Now, the idea is, as you can see on the left here, it's got project start, and on the right, project fin. And at the beginning, the deposit is paid before you start work. You hash out the details with the client, and you take I always do a non-refundable deposit, because at this point, they're kind of paying me for my time there for me to sit down and do the research and do the work. It's a non-refundable deposit because I still need to get paid for that time. Now, I'm not yet being paid for the value. I do a 50% non-refundable deposit. Some people do 25%. You could try a 75% or a third, 33.333%, whatever. But you get paid that deposit up front before you start work, and then that should cover your time for the entire project. So what I've tried to do here, and it's maybe not that clear, project start, project finish, that deposit in red will reserve that time for that period. Once the project is finished and everything is signed off, you can send the final invoice for 50% or another 75% according to my maths, so you get paid 150%. That red one should actually be, let me change this because it will be confusing otherwise. Scribble you out, I made that too small, there we go. Red. 25%, there you go, now it adds up to 100. You get paid the deposit up front to reserve your time to do the job, and then you get paid the completion invoice when the job is done and the client is happy. That completion invoice goes after edits have been done, after they are very, very happy with everything you've done. This is what I tend to use the most because I now only really work with clients who I can trust to pay me that big 50% at the end. and not to sound super arrogant, but they have the money to pay 50% upfront for a non-refundable deposit. I can also demand that 50% because they know that I'm going to do the work. I'm not going to take it and go, oh. Which happened to a client of mine recently, actually. They paid me in the next, it's the next model, which I'll go through. We agreed on this payment structure, and they hired a designer to turn my copy into something that looked aesthetically pleasing rather than just words. And this guy took his deposit and didn't do any work. So you might have to negotiate a bit there. There is a risk for the client for a non-refundable deposit. I like to think of this, if you're familiar with more journalistic terms, it's kind of like a kill fee. It's you're guaranteed that payment even if they don't run with what you've done for them. That is the payment for your time at the end of the day, and the last one is the payment for the value. If they don't agree to a non-refundable deposit, you can minimize that risk for them by going through to zoom in, Pete, to a milestone process. Now, a milestone, you split the project up into sections, and each payment is to cover the next section's worth of work. So for instance, I've written here, so this is what I recently did with a client. We actually did this in thirds, but I've just put it down to 25% into quarters here. So you take the initial invoice will be similar to the deposit, non-refundable, it's in red, and that is for like the research stage of whatever you're doing. Once the research is done, you outline what you've learned and what you think you're going to be doing to the client, and they go, all right, let's move forward, we like this idea. That's when you write the plan of the exact actions that you're going to be taking with them. You take a 25% payment before you do that plan for them. That takes you up to the initial draft, and I'm sorry that my handwriting is so poor. Writing on an iPad is not easy. And I've got short, fat fingers. So then milestone 2 would be creating that draft. So you've done the plan, you've done the research, now you've created the plan, now it's to get down and actually do the initial draft of this work. You do that, and then there's the final edit, so the client will come back. But at each stage, you basically do part of the work, not the full thing. You don't go, right, I'm going to go away and do the whole thing, write the sales page. The first stage is I'm going to go out and understand who your customers are. The next stage is I'm going to put this into something that you can use for your business forevermore, to say like this is their key points. So you turn that research into something actionable for them. Then you personally, as the writer, turn that actionable plan into an actual piece of copy, and then you edit that, and then that's the project done. But you split it down into step by step. What are the most logical split points from where you move from doing sort of research into planning into drafting into editing, or whatever it might be, depending on the project. You split it down into those key actions, and you say, right, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. You're going to pay me at point X, at point Y, and at point Z. This way, you're being paid in advance for the research stage. You're being paid in advance for the planning stage, whatever stages you choose. If the client halfway through goes, do you know what, we don't want to continue with this anymore, you're not being left out in the cold with no payment coming your way. You've already been paid for the section that you're on. So you've covered yourself there. A couple of tips, though, for doing this. But it's just a much easier way to cover your own back. Always outline payment terms in your contract. Always have a contract. Always outline exactly how this payment is going to be happening. So in my contract template, I always have a 50% deposit just written into the template. And it autofills and stuff, so it's fine. But you can easily change that. Always have you will pay me 25. This is the total fee. You will pay me 25% of the total fee, and put the monetary figure in numbers. At this point, you'll pay me this at this point, and then the completion at this point. Never move on with a project if payment is outstanding. Don't start doing the work if they've not paid the deposit. Don't move from stage 1 past milestone 1 to stage 2 if they haven't paid that thing. This is the whole reason for doing this, is so that you get paid. Deliver what you promised. If you say like, you're going to pay me 50% up front and then I'm going to deliver XYZ within 2 weeks, do that. The quickest way to ruin your reputation is to take somebody's money and give them nothing in return. So do what you promise. and then work with the client. So I wanted to do the 50% deposit, 50% completion for a recent project. They were like, we're not sure about that. And I said, all right, how about we split it down into milestones? It minimizes the risk for you because you can see from like step by step by step by step. I still get the exact amount that I wanted out of this, but they're not taking such a big risk by paying such a big amount at the beginning and then just hoping that I do the work. So always work with the client to find the most agreeable solution. But those are some basic terms, but always stick to those. That's it for this one. But always have a deposit, always work to some sort of milestones. This is not applicable if you're doing something like a monthly retained services, which I'll perhaps do in another video. But yeah, it's cover your own back is basically what this comes to. Cover your own back. Make sure that you are being paid at least something for what you're doing. Don't ever be that person who spent 3 weeks doing something and gets absolutely fuck all at the end of it. If you can break it down step by step and get paid along the way, you can at least come out with 25%, 50%, 75%, 66%, however you're breaking it down, of the payment, which means that you're not going to be there having wasted 3 weeks on a project and gone, I've got no money. You're going to get something out of it. Always work in a way that is sustainable for you. Don't do it in a way that fucks the client over, but make sure that you're looked after. But that's it. If you want access to this, and I'll maybe write a little something around this to help detail what the... I'm pointing down because I'm pointing at my iPad where I can write on it. But you can get this and maybe some written stuff that I'll write around it as well in the ongoing uploaded video downloads folder, which if you want access to, there is a link in the description below. Click on that, fill out your stuff on your page, and we'll go from there. See you in the next one.